So some may not know and ask what is the difference between a legal and an equitable remedy. Well, an equitable remedy is an action versus a financial award. These types of remedies are often granted to a party when the monetary compensation or other possible legal remedies result in what would be considered to be an inadequate resolution. A court could require also that any legal damages be made available before they award an equitable relief. This can occur in instances where the judge will award this type of relief if it is difficult to accurately calculate the amount of actual damages. A legal remedy is a type of compensation that is awarded for damages that are sustained due to a breach of contract between parties. There are several monetary forms of compensation that can be awarded by the court, along with possible punitive damages to the remedy to send a message to the defendant that they were in the wrong, and it would also deter them from committing the same error again. So basically, the difference between an equitable and legal remedy is that for instances where there is no breach of contract, then through a legal remedy there will be monetary compensation. With an equitable remedy, the issue is resolved through a non-monetary resolution. Step by step of how a legal remedy works is that compensatory damages are awarded through a court when a person or persons is in breach of contract. The defendant will then be ordered to pay the plaintiff an amount that is equal to what they were promised in the contract, so they can get what was agreed on from somewhere else. An example of this would be if you took your car to the mechanic and you paid him upfront $300 to do repairs on your car. After a period of time, the mechanic told you that he was unable to complete the work. You would, of course, seek out a new mechanic and for the same repairs that needed to still be done, but the cost instead is $500. If found to be reasonable by the courts, the defendant would then be ordered to pay $500 in compensatory damages so that you could afford to have your vehicle repaired. Restitution, however, is awarded again when due to a breach of contract between parties. The defendant is ordered to pay to pay back the plaintiff. Taking the same scenario, for example, with the mechanic that was unable to complete the work, instead of having to pay for the higher amount, the defendant would only have to pay the original amount that was agreed on in the contract for services that were not rendered. Tort law restitution applies to the measure of damages where it is required to restore the plaintiff to the position that they were in prior to the commission of the tort. An example would be an individual is injured by another person, then they could seek medical expenses and lost wages as a means of restitution. Examples of equitable remedy is a specific performance is when a court order requires that the breaching party to a contract still perform their part of the contract agreement in accordance with its original terms. An example of this would be the Masterpiece Cake Shop in Lakewood, Colorado, that was ordered to not only continue to make cakes for gay couples despite it being against its religious beliefs, but also that the employees must attend sensitivity training, and also he must submit quarterly reports showing that he did not refuse service to any customers based on their sexual orientation for a period of 2 years. Contract rescission is when the original contract that was breached becomes canceled and therefore rescinded. Reasons that a contract may be rescinded include a breach of contract between parties. This would allow for whichever party is wrong to do so for the reasons of misrepresentation. Both parties agree, and therefore both parties agree to cancel the contract. By reason of mistake or due to undue influence or duress, and lastly for force of majeure from an unforeseen event that would prevent the parties involved from signing the contract, there is, of course, the option to rewrite the new contract that is more clear in defining what the requirements are for both parties. The types of equitable remedies in law include contract rescission, reformation, and injunctions, as well as specific performance. What we will now discuss is the defenses to both specific performance and injunctions. The types of equitable remedies in law include specific performance is when a court requires that an individual party is in breach of contract still completes their obligation that is originally agreed upon in a contract. An example of being groceries that were paid for prior to being delivered but were not. An exception to this rule would be a contract that is enforceable because it does not comply with the statute of frauds, and therefore it cannot be enforceable through specific performance. Defenses to specific performance can include laches, the doctrine of clean hands, or mistaken misrepresentation. When it comes to injunctions, an injunction is when a court order demands that the party cease doing a specific act due to the fact that it is causing irreparable harm to another party which cannot be made whole through monetary damages awarded by a court. Defenses to injunctions can include unclean hands, laches, or hardship. This is a step-by-step explanation to the defenses to equitable remedies of law and the instances in which they might be applied. When it comes to defenses regarding specific performance, laches are a type of defense that prevents the enforcement of a contract by specific performance. It's typically an unreasonable delay in asserting a right to which it is enforced would cause prejudice, injury, or even a disadvantage to others. It is only applied in cases where the enforcement of a right will cause an injustice. Two elements of an estoppel by laches are those where the plaintiff delayed the seeking in a breach of contract suit unreasonably, or delayed caused some form of harm or prejudice against the defending party. The most common use of a lache is when a plaintiff delays filing in court in order to avoid dealing with any witnesses that could possibly hurt the recovery. The clean hand doctrine is when a court will deny specific performance in the plaintiff act and the manner in which it deemed to be in bad faith or fraudulent when conducting the transaction that they're seeking relief from. Mistake and misrepresentation are the terms of a contract that would constitute a defense against specific performance. The courts, however, would only enforce a contract that is certain and definitive terms if a mistake is sufficient enough to warrant a rescission of the contract, is also sufficient enough to justify or prevent the enforcement of the contract. Defenses to an injunction, going back to the unclean hands doctrine, if the party is requesting the injunction took part in any similar misconduct as a party with whom they are filing against, the suit will be denied by the courts. Back to laches, when an individual intentionally waits to file or ask for an injunction, that ultimately leads to a negative consequence against the person that the injunction is filed against. Hardship is a type of injunction that can cause a financial burden or undue hardship that may not be enforced through the courts. A lache can be used when the individual that is claiming relief did not act fast enough or within a reasonable amount of time to have the individual that breached the contract or perform their part of the agreement. Unclean hands can be used when the individual that is filing the complaint intentionally provides the defendant with misleading or inaccurate information regarding the suit in the hopes that a mistake will be made on their behalf, or if a plaintiff purposely and knowingly does not respond to any correspondence from the opposing party or individual on time and therefore are assuming that the defendant will not fulfill their part of the contract agreement, so the plaintiff breaches the contract. Mistake and misrepresentation can be used in certain instances where misrepresentation is consciously made, without any belief that it is true or reckless. It pertains to truth, and misrepresentations were carelessly made without having reasonable grounds to believe that it was true. The defendant could possibly have a defense due to the fact that the other party made an untrue statement and resulted in inducing the party to enter into or sign a contract agreement. Examples of equitable remedies are specific performance, injunction, and restitution. Two court cases that involve these are Andrew versus Blake. Andrews owned 2.3 acres parcels of land in Phoenix. He leased to Blake through Moon Valley Nursery. The parties operated under a 1-year lease in '95. When they entered into a 3-year lease. It was terminated in 1999, but it also provided the option for Blake to purchase the property for $300,000. The record contains conflicting evidence that how Blake first attempted to exercise the option to purchase in '99. In his affidavit, Blake stated that he had told Andrews in a telephone call in September that he was unconditionally exercising his options. Another case is the Certic versus Moorman. One Civil Plaza, we'll go refer to as CCP, was formed in '83 to develop a commercial building in Scottsdale. Gilbert Wilson, Steve Moorman, and Steve Booch were general partners. The sole partner was CCP, another limited partnership in which the defendant, Brent Osborne, was general manager. In '84, Steve Bunch assigned to plaintiffs his right to repayment of the loan, while CCP retained his partnership interest. In '85, Moorman, Wilson, and CCP filed a separate action to force Bunch to execute a certificate of cancellation on the limited partnership. If you want to look more into these specific cases, I have my reference sheet right here.